Lady Colin Campbell, let me bring you in on this. What do you make of it?
Well, Dan, it confirms what I've been saying for the last 2 years. You know, it's been no secret in certain circles that despite Meghan's attempts to cultivate the Democratic Party, or like all A-listers, everybody is treating her like the pariah that she is. Nobody wants to know. And Harry, same thing. You know, people have had a choice to make and they have made it. Whether it's the Amal and George Clooney's or the Jill and Joe Bidens, and the list is fairly endless. They've had a choice. Either they are with Harry and Meghan or they leave their options open to have good relations with the royal family. But they can't do both. And what's really interesting is how this has got out. Because this has not got out by accident. This has got out purposely.
Phil Dampier, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, good evening, Dan. I mean, getting on Air Force One was a non-starter, wasn't it? I mean, it's not a taxi service, isn't it? I mean, it would have set a precedent, and you can't have any Tom, Dick or Harry getting on Air Force One. See what I did there? You know, that was never going to happen. But they're definitely on the way out, as Lady C says. We don't see them with the Obamas anymore. We don't see them even with Oprah anymore. And I think although Joe Biden's quite happy to pull strings in the background concerning Harry's visa, he is actually quite close to King Charles, as we saw the other day when he was at Windsor Castle with him. They get on very well. They see eye to eye on things like climate change. And if he's going to serve a second term, he wants to have better relations with him. So although I know Tom Bowyer thinks that Meghan might want to stand as president one day, I just don't see it happening now. I don't think she's got the clout to do it. I don't think she's got the backing. I don't think she's got the temperament for it. And I think she ought to forget all about a political career and really concentrate on something commercial, like, you know, the health and beauty lifestyle, reinvent the tick, something like that, and just forget it, because I just don't think she's cut out for it.
Now, look, in a damn mean column for the Daily Mail today, Richard Kay says Harry and Meghan's treatment of her estranged father, Thomas Markle, who celebrated 5 birthdays since speaking to his daughter this week, is the cruelest thing they've ever done. Now, Lady C, you're very close to the Markle family. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I agree with everything Richard Kay said. And I said it in my book, Meghan and Harry, The Real Story, that the biggest mistake Meghan would be proven to have made was that she had dumped her father the way she did. You know, everybody in every culture, everywhere in the world understands a variation of the commandment, honour thy mother and thy father, that thy days on this earth may be long. You know, it doesn't matter. Every family has its issues. People don't like certain people in the family. Nobody trashes their family. It is just not done. And to humiliate not only her father, but the rest of her family the way she did, people picked up on the fact that it was unforgivable, and they have not forgiven her. It gave a clear insight into Meghan's lack of character, lack of feeling, lack of loyalty. And I could go on endlessly about the messages it gives lack of. But the fact of the matter is the public have picked up on it, and they picked up on it very early on. You know, the only people who didn't pick up on it were the idiots who follow her and think that she's leading them to the Holy Grail, when in fact she's leading them to something pretty unholy.
Phil Dampier, your take?
Yeah, well, Lady C knows the Markles much better than I do, Dan. But I mean, he really has been the biggest loser out of all of this since the whole Sorry saga started, hasn't he? I mean, he missed the wedding. He's lost his daughter. He's never met the grandchildren. I mean, the whole thing is absolutely tragic. And the fact that even now Harry and Meghan refer to the fact that as if he's just some sort of complete stranger and cannot be bothered to go down and see him when he's literally just down the road across the border in Mexico. I mean, it's absolutely tragic, and it really indicates what they are like as people. That they, and I mean, God forbid, I don't know what they're going to feel like if something happens to him, because we know he's not in the best of health. But it really is a very, very sad story, and I think Richard Kay's right. He has been the biggest victim in all this.
Now, there you see, the King's sovereign grant has been slashed in half by the Treasury. Is it right for the monarch to foot the bill for public services?
Well, Dan, I've looked into it quite carefully, and, you know, there are fewer royals actually working at the moment, and they're doing fewer assignments, engagements. And William and his family are now out of the sovereign grant. William has the Duchy of Cornwall. So Charles has actually done a very clever thing, if you stop to think about it. He has given his critics a poisoned chalice because he has voluntarily cut down the cost of the monarchy. And I think that this is sustainable for a few years. But when the younger ones have to get involved, because, I mean, the average age of the working royals is about 70. And when the younger ones get involved, they're going to have to increase the sovereign grant again, which I'm sure they will do without a problem. I think the monarchy costs each person in this country £1.29 per annum.
Phil Dampier?
Yeah, I think Lady C's absolutely right. The fact that this initiative, if you like, is coming from the King himself, I think speaks volumes. I mean, he knows that they've done extremely well out of the system over the last decade or so. It was actually devised by George Osborne. And they've raked it in, really, because they've had things like wind farms and they own the whole of the coast around the UK and the properties in London. So they've made a lot of money. And I think he realises that they really have done well financially. So he's giving something back. We saw last week that Camilla's not going to be given a salary like Prince Philip was from the state. That's going to be private. We saw Prince William renting out the cottage that Charles used to stay in Wales. So it's all moving in the right direction, and I think they're doing the right thing, and I think the public will respect them for it. So it's coming from them, and that's why it counts.
Well, Lady C, I would like some of the money to be spent on saving the next Commonwealth Games, because, you know, this hard left premier in Australia has just got rid of them and Melbourne altogether. And I think actually the Commonwealth Games are so important. Why not have them back in the UK? Isn't that a good use of Charles as well and William's now money?
I think it's a brilliant idea, Dan. I think it's a brilliant idea. When you stop to think of all of the athletes who have been training for years for this moment, and to have it pulled by that creep in, I think it's Victoria.
Yes, Victoria. Dan Andrews, the Republican Dan Andrews of Victoria.
Yes, and he's done it without explanation, and there's no real reason for doing it. And he's done it because he's trying to further the Republican agenda. But, I mean, it's not fair to the athletes all over the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth is the biggest bloc of nations in the world. We're speaking about billions of people, if not hundreds of millions of people. And they all have athletes who have been training for years. How dare he deprive them of their opportunity?
I totally agree. Lady C, Phil D, like that. My Royal Masterminds, thank you both so much. But coming up,